Welcome back to the workbench. Today I'm taking a look at the Italeri AH-64D Apache Longbow in 1/72 scale. Join me as I take a look inside the box and find out what this kit is like. Hi, I'm Matt and you're watching Model Minute. So on the front of the box, and it's quite a nice box actually, I find that the Italeri kits tend to come in slightly higher quality boxes than some of their competitors, which tend to use slightly thinner card, I guess to save weight and space, and this is actually it has quite a nice feel to it. So on the front we've got a nice image of the Apache in a sort of striking and dramatic pose, and you can see here the various armaments on the little stub wings there. Down here in the bottom left, it tells us that it's an officially licensed product not once, but twice. I guess they printed this image on, but they've also got sort of like a seal sticker from Boeing, so that's quite a nice addition. We know that they've sort of worked together to get this kit out onto the market. Up here it tells us that this is number 80, I guess that's its serial number. It says that it's got decals for an American, US Army, US Air Force version, and that figures are not included. So at least they've told us here that figures are not included. Flip over onto the back and you can see here the different paint schemes that are included, which is a little bit interesting because it said on the front that we had American version, but actually it says that we've got a British version and a Dutch version in here. Down here it tells us the suggested colour scheme, and it's got FS numbers for these two and just gunmetal colour for other elements. It's a little bit misleading here because they've done it sort of in a very artistic way. So there's shading and nice, it looks like a really nice image. But if you're using this as an actual painting reference, you might find it a little bit difficult because the elements that are in shade you might think that need to be painted black, for example, because that's sort of the closest colour. Over here we've got some information about the kit and some safety warnings, and it indicates that it should be suitable for those aged 14 and older. The long edge on this side has more information about the actual Apache. The other long edge, and this is quite nice, it has images of what we're going to get inside the box. So we've got a decal sheet, clear parts and 2 sprues. And then the sides feature the same information as on the front, along with the dimensions, and it helps you identify it on the shelf. So let's get inside and see what we've got. So as normal, I'm going to take a look at the instructions first. We've got a little sort of fold out booklet, and this will just keep folding out for miles, so I'll try my best to get it all in frame as I do it. On the front we've got information about the actual Apache, along with some more safety information down the bottom, and then we flip over and we've got a sprue map, which is absolutely fantastic because it just helps you find things on the sprue if you are struggling to find them, and it indicates to us that there are some parts which are not included, which is this big bit here and this bit here. I'm not sure what they're for, but I am aware that you can get other versions of this kit. This is a 64D version, but I think you can get like a 64A version as well, so they are probably for that. So let's keep folding it out. Up here we've got our colour callouts, and each paint has been given a letter, which is very similar to the Revell way, and I'm not a big fan of it, but that's pretty much because although they've suggested Model Master paints here, they're pretty much leaving you to your own devices to figure out which paint you want to use. As you can see, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that right? I can't count. Yes, 11. 11 different paints for this kit, so it shouldn't be too difficult to paint up. And then we progress on to actually building the kit. So we're starting off, section 1 has actually got a number of steps inside it. So you start with a step and then you've got sub-steps. So we start off by painting the various instruments on the control panel, then we add them to the inside of the cockpit. Let's keep going, turn over the page. We need to add the cockpit to the inside of the 2 fuselage halves, assemble the engines. We need to cement or glue this section into the cockpit canopy, and then we're progressing on to, I think that's like the sensor package system at the front. All of these parts, including the stub wings and the tail, are added on, and then the landing gear with the machine gun on the nose. We've got some rockets which need to be assembled onto their pylons. and the rocket pods and some more other parts that need to be cemented together. Then we progress on to adding those elements to the underside of the aircraft, and then we move on to building up the rotors, which doesn't look to me that it will be too difficult. Turn over the page, let's keep going. So here, this is quite a busy step, there's a lot going on here. Past the top bit through the rotors. I'm not sure if they've intended this to spin. It looks like you might be able to if you're careful. The tail rotor, however, doesn't look like it will spin at all. That's just cemented straight in. And that's it. So there's technically 8 steps in the actual construction of this model, but these steps are quite busy. There's a lot going on in them. You would have to be careful when reading them, because otherwise you might end up putting things in the wrong place. Down here we've got some information about the decals, because that's the next step. The next step is painting and decaling. So the first version we've got here is the US Army version, and you can see that they have indicated the paint colour down here, which is flat drab, and they all use the same olive drab on the model. The only differences are the placement of decals, which are clearly numbered, and some of them have got a few more decals than others, but generally you're looking at about the same number of decals. The next version is the British Army, and then the next version is the Dutch Army. And that's it. I mean, the instructions are quite long. They're a bit complicated in places, but I think as long as you're careful, you're going to get your kit built all right. Let's get into this bag and take a look at the decals next. So contained in this bag, so everything else is inside this bag. You've got your plastic parts and then another bag with your clear parts in, but the decals are just loose in that bag. So the decal sheet is actually surprisingly small. But as you can see, the decals have been printed really well. Everything seems to be legible. There doesn't seem to be any sort of registry issues. Everything's quite clear. Although there is that a registry error there, or is it supposed to be like that? That red dot is off center, but it seems to be the only one. So maybe it's supposed to be like that. Also here, maybe that printing's not quite as good as it could be. Or again, I'm not entirely sure about the Apache. It might be like that. But they look okay. I think you're going to end up with a reasonable kit from these. So let's take a look at the clear parts. So you get one clear sprue in this bag here. And you'll find the main cockpit canopy along with some smaller clear components as well. And the canopy is, for the most part, crystal clear. It's got an absolutely wonderful shine on it. But there are some little scratches in the top here. That could just be from where they've been bouncing around inside the box. The moulded frame lines are very shallow. They are visible, and there seems to be even like a representation of a windscreen wiper on there, but they are incredibly shallow. You might have a little bit of trouble if you decide to paint with a brush like I do in following those lines. Let's move on to the other sprues. So we get 2 sprues, both moulded in this sort of grey, green, khaki, olive drab plastic. So it's almost, I would say, the right colour. It might be a little bit off, but it's almost there. So you might not, if you're a beginner, want to really paint this. You could just assemble it and have an Apache ready to go. Looking at this, we've got a lot of parts on these sprues. They're not massive, and the detailing is quite good. There is a little bit of flash in a few places that you're going to have to clean up, but the detailing, I mean, look at this rotor head here. The detailing on some of these parts is absolutely fantastic. We've got representation of the harnesses in the seats of the 2 crewmen. We've got the control panel here. It's quite nicely done. You can see lots of the instruments on there. The mold quality is actually surprisingly good. On the outside, you've got lots of raised and riveted details, which I actually think is quite prototypical of the real aircraft. I don't think that you'd expect to see recessed decals on the actual Apache, so I think that's quite appropriate. And then this is the inside of the cockpit here, and it looks all right, to be honest. It doesn't look like it's really lacking in detail. So let's take a look at the other sprue. And it's pretty much the same affair. Quite reasonably well moulded, lots of nice detail in places. And the flash is reasonably low. Let's take a look at some of these small components. So you can see quite a good representation of detail on the machine gun there. And the sort of and the rotor blades. It's really quite well done. This should make a very nice kit of the Apache. See the turbine intakes there. Again, no detail on the inside here, but you're not really going to see anything there anyway. Yep, just a little bit of flash in places that need to be removed. Everything's held securely on the sprue. I'd be surprised if you got one of these in a damaged condition. So let's recap. What do we get? Two sort of khaki olive drab sprues with some really nicely detailed parts on there. We get one little clear sprue with a very nice canopy, but you might struggle to paint it if, like me, you use a brush. Some decals which look to be really quite well printed, but there are a few little errors in places which I have my queries about, but I'm not entirely sure. Let's get them all back in their bag. And it's finished off with some instructions which look like they'd be quite reasonable to follow, but they are quite busy in a few steps. And all of that comes contained within a reasonably nice box. Italeri do quite nice boxes for their kits. So how much did I pay for this? I paid just over £11 for this, which is about the sort of market price you'd find. Maybe that's a little bit expensive. I would prefer to pay, you know, around 10 or slightly less, but it's actually a really nice looking kit, so I didn't really mind paying that little bit extra. Having a look online, you might be able to find this for around the £10 mark. Second hand, you're probably looking at a little bit less than that. This particular version dates from 2011, but it has been available more recently from Zvezda, the exact same tooling, just in a different box. And this has been part of the Italeri range as well as others. I mean, Airfix had it in their range for a couple of years between 2004 and 2008. But originally Italeri tooled this back in 1987, which, to be honest, I wouldn't have really known. I know it's had a few updated parts in places, particularly I think for the D and the A version, but it doesn't look really like a 1987 tooled kit. I was actually pleasantly surprised with how nice it looked when I took it out. I thought it was going to be more recent than that. But anyway, let me know what you think of this kit in the comments below. I'm probably going to do the British version because I am British, even though I think the United States version does look slightly more attractive with those big, you know, decals like that. So maybe drop a comment as well on which version you'd like to see me do. And before I end the video, honourable mention to my patrons over on Patreon. A massive thank you to you guys for the support that you give my channel. To find out more about what pledging your support means, including early access to videos and extra behind the scenes stuff, take a look at the link in the description. Don't forget that you can connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and my own Discord server. Oh, and if you made it this far, please consider subscribing with notifications on so that you don't miss any of my future uploads. All that's left to say is a massive thank you to you for watching, and I'll see you all on the workbench again next time.